Connor Hilton. On December 23, 2023, Friendswood, Texas became the scene of a calculated attack that would shatter multiple families during the holiday season. Connor Hilton, a teenager at the time, invited two friends to his home for what they believed would be a casual gathering. What drove someone to plan such a deliberate act against people who trusted him? Hilton shot his friends, Ethan Riley and Benjamin Bleak, with an AR-15 rifle, ending Riley's life and severely injuring Bleak. When questioned by police, Hilton confessed that he had wanted to commit a homicide for a long time. Hilton's defense team attempted to blame his actions on side effects from Accutane, medication he had been taking for skin conditions. However, his own statements to investigators revealed a long-standing desire to harm others, suggesting premeditation rather than medication-induced behavior. The attack occurred in Hilton's family home, where he had deliberately invited his victims under the pretense of friendship. This betrayal of trust made the crime particularly shocking to the community and the victims' families. During court proceedings, survivor Benjamin Bleak confronted Hilton directly, telling him to stop crying and expressing his disbelief at Hilton's apparent emotion. Bleak's confrontation highlighted the disconnect between Hilton's courtroom tears and his lack of genuine remorse. Hilton confessed immediately after the shooting, making no attempt to flee or deny his actions. His quick confession suggested either a desire for attention or a complete disconnect from the gravity of his actions. In September 2025, Hilton pleaded guilty to avoid trial and was sentenced to 50 years for the primary charge and 20 years for assault, to be served concurrently. The plea deal meant he would be eligible for parole after serving 25 years. Riley's family described the devastating impact on their community, noting how the crime had shaken everyone who knew the victims. The randomness of Hilton's victim selection made the crime particularly frightening to other young people in the area. Hilton currently serves his sentence in a Texas state prison facility. But the next case would involve ideology taken to its deadliest extreme: Safa Bular. In 2017, London became the center of a case that would redefine how authorities approach radicalization among young people. Safa Bular, a teenager from Vauxhall, became involved in what prosecutors would describe as the most serious domestic terror plot involving someone of her age. How does someone so young become convinced to plan mass harm in the name of ideology? Bular planned a knife and grenade attack on the British Museum as part of an all-female terror cell that included her mother and sister. The plot was inspired by her online contact with an ISIS recruiter who had groomed her into adopting extremist jihadist views. Bular used coded language in her communications, referring to the planned attack as a tea party. This deceptive communication demonstrated sophisticated planning and awareness that her activities were being monitored by authorities. The radicalization process began when Bular was just 16, highlighting how vulnerable young people can be to online extremist recruitment. Her family's involvement in the plot showed how radicalization can spread through household networks. Counterterrorism police had been monitoring Bular's activities through surveillance operations that revealed the extent of her planning. The intercepted communications provided crucial evidence of her intentions and the seriousness of the threat she posed. During her trial, Bular showed no signs of remorse for her planned actions or recognition of the potential harm to innocent people. Her continued adherence to extremist ideology, even after arrest, concerned security officials and court observers. Bular was convicted in 2018 of preparing terrorist acts and became the youngest female in UK history to be convicted of planning a terror attack. She was sentenced to life imprisonment with a minimum term of 13 years. Appeals on behalf of her family members resulted in reduced sentences for her sister, but Bular's conviction and sentence were upheld. The court determined that her role as the primary planner warranted the harshest penalty. As of 2025, Boulard remains incarcerated in a UK women's prison facility. The next case would cross an ocean and involve a deadly romantic obsession. Evan Castaner. In May 2024, Casper, Wyoming witnessed a crime that would highlight the deadly potential of relationship conflicts among young people. Evan Castaner, a teenager dealing with the end of a romantic relationship, would commit an act that shocked his small community. How does a typical teenage breakup escalate to such a tragic conclusion? Castaner shot and ended the life of his ex-girlfriend, Linnea Brown, near Buckboard Park, after a period of stalking behavior following their breakup. Evidence showed that he had been sending threatening messages, including texts stating he was about to hurt someone. The attack was motivated by jealousy and rage over the relationship ending. Castaner's inability to accept the breakup led to increasingly aggressive behavior toward Brown, culminating in the fatal shooting. Castaner shot Brown at point-blank range, demonstrating the deliberate and personal nature of the attack. The close proximity of the shooting indicated this was not a crime of passion, but a calculated act of revenge. After the shooting, Castaner confessed to authorities, showing no apparent remorse for his actions. His confession was matter-of-fact, lacking any expression of regret or understanding of the gravity of what he had done. During court proceedings in November 2024, Castaner pleaded guilty to second-degree charges. In April 2025, he was sentenced to 42 to 75 years in prison. Brown's family made powerful statements during sentencing, urging others to take threats from former partners seriously. Their advocacy highlighted the warning signs that had been present before the fatal attack. Castaner's legal team has filed an appeal regarding his sentencing, arguing that juvenile considerations should have resulted in a lighter penalty. However, the severity of the crime and his lack of remorse have been cited as factors supporting the lengthy sentence. The next case would involve a family secret with deadly consequences. Paris, Mayo. In March 2019, Ross-on-Wye, UK became the scene of a family tragedy that would expose the deadly consequences of concealed circumstances. Paris Mayo, a teenager who had hidden her pregnancy from her family, would commit an act that shocked the local community. What drives someone to harm their own newborn rather than seek help? Mayo gave birth alone and then attacked and suffocated her newborn son, Stanley, whom she later concealed. She had successfully hidden her pregnancy from her family throughout its duration. The motivation appeared to stem from panic about revealing the pregnancy to her family rather than any long-term planning. Mayo later claimed she didn't know she was pregnant, though medical evidence contradicted this assertion. The baby's body was discovered by family members, leading to an investigation that revealed the full extent of what had occurred. Autopsy results showed that Stanley had suffered skull fractures before being suffocated. During her trial, Mayo's defense team attempted to argue for an infanticide verdict rather than deliberate harm, but the jury rejected this lesser charge. The evidence of deliberate harm to the infant was deemed too substantial to support the infanticide defense. Mayo showed little emotion during court proceedings and maintained her claim of ignorance about the pregnancy, despite evidence to the contrary. The judge described her actions as a dreadful thing, while noting her apparent lack of genuine remorse. In June 2023, Mayo was convicted and sentenced to life imprisonment with a minimum term of 12 years. Her legal team filed an appeal bid in January 2025. The next case would involve a relationship dispute with fatal consequences. Thomas Griffiths. In May 2019, Wiltshire, UK witnessed a crime that would expose the deadly potential of teenage relationship conflicts. Thomas Griffiths, a teenager struggling with the end of a romantic relationship, would commit an act that he then attempted to cover up through deception. How does someone plan to stage a scene while ending another person's life? Griffiths traveled to the home of his ex-girlfriend, Ellie Gould, and stabbed her 13 times before attempting to stage the scene to look like self-harm. His motivation stemmed from rage over their recent breakup and her refusal to reconcile. Griffiths had a troubled background that included exposure to domestic instability and regular substance use. These factors may have contributed to his inability to handle rejection and his tendency toward violent solutions to personal problems. After the attack, Griffiths inflicted wounds on himself in an attempt to support his fabricated story that Gould had harmed herself. The self-inflicted injuries were intended to make it appear that he had tried to intervene in a self-harm situation. However, the physical evidence at the scene contradicted his story, and the self-inflicted wounds ultimately led investigators to suspect his involvement. Forensic analysis revealed the staged nature of the scene and Griffiths' role in creating it. Faced with overwhelming evidence, Griffiths eventually confessed to the attack. His confession came only after his deception had been exposed, showing no voluntary remorse for his actions. In November 2019, Griffiths pleaded guilty and was sentenced to life imprisonment with a minimum term of 12.5 years. The sentence reflected both the severity of his crime and his age at the time of the offense. Gould's mother has since campaigned for tougher sentencing guidelines for domestic crimes, using her daughter's case to advocate for better protection of young women. Her advocacy has kept the case in public attention and highlighted the need for better education about healthy relationships. Griffiths currently serves his sentence in a UK prison facility. The next case would involve gang-related targeting with deadly results. Johnny Munoz. In April 2023, Wyoming became the scene of a gang-related attack that would claim the life of a teenager and expose the growing influence of organized criminal activity among young people. Johnny Munoz, a teenager involved in gang activities, would commit an act that shocked his community. What drives young people to participate in organized criminal activities that target innocent victims? Munoz conducted a drive-by shooting that ended the life of 15-year-old Bailey Carabajal Clark. The attack was described by authorities as targeted and gang-related rather than random. Munoz's background included involvement with criminal organizations from a young age, though specific details about his childhood remain limited in public records. His criminal associations appear to have normalized harmful behavior and made him willing to participate in serious crimes. The shooting occurred as part of coordinated criminal activity involving multiple defendants. This group dynamic likely reinforced criminal thinking and made individual participants feel less responsible for the consequences of their actions. Munoz was apprehended along with his co-defendant following an investigation by local authorities. The coordinated nature of their criminal activity made it easier for investigators to connect them to the crime and build a strong case. During court proceedings, Munoz showed no apparent remorse for his actions or recognition of the impact on the victim's family. His demeanor suggested a concerning disconnect from the human consequences of criminal behavior. In December 2023, Munoz was convicted of second-degree charges. In March 2024, he was sentenced to 25 to 35 years in prison. Carabajal Clark's family delivered powerful impact statements during sentencing, describing the devastating loss of a young person with her whole life ahead of her. Their testimony highlighted the far-reaching consequences of gang-related activities on innocent community members. Munoz currently serves his sentence in a Wyoming State Correctional Facility. The next case would involve a particularly brutal act motivated by jealousy, Maricela Nicolasa Diaz. In November 2009, South Dakota became the scene of one of the most brutal crimes involving teenage perpetrators in the state's history. Maricela Nicolasa Diaz, a teenager at the time, would participate in an act so severe it would shock even experienced investigators. What could drive someone so young to participate in such extreme acts of cruelty? Diaz, along with her boyfriend, tortured, stabbed, and burned 16-year-old Jasmine Guevara in what prosecutors described as a revenge-motivated attack. The motivation appeared to stem from jealousy and personal grudges between the perpetrators and their victim. The attack involved multiple forms of harm inflicted over an extended period, demonstrating a level of premeditation and cruelty that disturbed investigators. The systematic nature of the harm suggested careful planning rather than impulsive behavior. Diaz was apprehended after confessing to authorities during interrogation. However, she later attempted to appeal her conviction by claiming her confession was involuntary. During her trial, Diaz was tried as an adult despite her age, reflecting the serious nature of her crimes. She was convicted and sentenced to 80 years in prison in 2015. Diaz's appeals were consistently rejected by higher courts, including challenges that went all the way to the state Supreme Court. The courts determined that her conviction was sound and that her sentence was appropriate given the severity of her crimes. Throughout the legal proceedings, Diaz showed little genuine remorse for her actions or understanding of the impact on Guevara's family. Her focus appeared to be primarily on challenging her conviction rather than accepting responsibility for her role in the crime. As of 2016, all of Diaz's appeals had been exhausted, and she continues to serve her 80-year sentence. The lengthy sentence reflects both the brutal nature of her crime and the court's determination that she posed a continued danger to society. Diaz currently serves her sentence in a South Dakota State Correctional Facility. The next case would involve multiple victims in a coordinated attack. Tajay Bruton. In March 2023, Marion County, Florida, witnessed one of the most shocking crimes in the area's recent history. Tajay Bruton, a teenager involved in gang activities, would participate in an attack that claimed 3 young lives in what prosecutors described as execution-style killings. How does someone so young become involved in such calculated and brutal criminal acts? Bruton, along with co-defendants, carried out what authorities called execution-style shootings that ended the lives of Layla Silvernail, Camille Quarles, and Michael Hodo. The motivation was identified as robbery, with the perpetrators specifically targeting their victims for financial gain. Bruton's background included gang involvement from a young age, which appeared to have desensitized him to criminal behavior and made him willing to participate in increasingly serious crimes. The group dynamics of his criminal organization likely reinforced harmful thinking patterns. The attack was carried out in a methodical manner that suggested careful planning and coordination among the perpetrators. The systematic nature of the shootings indicated a level of premeditation that concerned investigators and prosecutors. Bruton was apprehended following a manhunt by local and federal authorities. The coordinated law enforcement response reflected the serious nature of the crimes and the potential danger posed by the perpetrators. During court proceedings, families of the victims described the brutal nature of the attacks and their lasting impact. They characterized the killings as execution style and emphasized the callous manner in which the perpetrators had carried out their crimes. Bruton showed no apparent remorse during his trial and even testified against his co-defendant, suggesting a willingness to prioritize his own interests over loyalty to his criminal associates. This behavior indicated a lack of genuine empathy or moral development. In July 2025, Bruton entered a no-contest plea and was sentenced to life imprisonment. The life sentence reflected the severity of his crimes and the court's determination that he posed an ongoing danger to public safety. The victims, Layla Silvernail, Camille Quarles, and Michael Hodo, were remembered by their families as young people with bright futures ahead of them. Their senseless deaths highlighted the devastating impact of gang-related criminal activity on entire communities. Bruton currently serves his life sentence in a Florida State Correctional Facility, where he will likely remain for the rest of his natural life. The next case would involve a family relationship turned deadly. Sierra Halseth. In April 2021, Las Vegas became the scene of a family tragedy that would be captured on video and shock viewers with its callous aftermath. Sierra Halseth, the daughter of a former state senator, would commit an act against her own father that she later discussed with disturbing casualness. What drives someone to harm a family member and then react with such indifference? Halseth, along with her boyfriend, stabbed and burned her father Daniel Halseth in their family home. The motivation stemmed from her father's opposition to her relationship with her significantly older boyfriend. Halseth came from a politically prominent family, as her father had served as a Nevada state senator. Her family's attempts to impose boundaries on her relationship had created ongoing conflict between Halseth and her father. After the attack, Halseth and her boyfriend fled the scene, but were later apprehended. What shocked investigators and the public was a video confession Halseth made while on the run, in which she laughed while discussing the crime. In the video, Halseth was heard laughing and saying that eliminating somebody felt amazing. This disturbing display of callousness toward ending her father's life became key evidence in her prosecution and highlighted her complete lack of remorse. The video confession provided investigators with irrefutable evidence of Halseth's state of mind immediately following the crime. Her laughter and casual discussion of the attack demonstrated a concerning absence of normal emotional responses to such a serious act. In 2022, Halseth pleaded guilty to avoid a potential sentence and was sentenced to life imprisonment with the possibility of parole after 25 years. The plea agreement allowed her to avoid a trial where her video confession would have been presented to a jury. Daniel Halseth was remembered as a dedicated public servant who had worked to improve his community through his political service. His tragic end at the hands of his own daughter highlighted the devastating impact of family conflicts that escalate beyond resolution. Halseth currently serves her sentence in a Nevada women's correctional facility. If you've made it this far and enjoy deep dives into the most disturbing criminal cases, hit that subscribe button and don't forget to press the bell icon for more shocking stories that examine. The next case would involve claims of justification that courts rejected. Ashley A. Martinson. In March 2015, Wisconsin became the scene of a family tragedy that would expose complex questions about personal responsibility and claimed justification. Ashley Martinson, a teenager who maintained an online presence focused on horror content, would commit acts against her family members that she claimed were necessary. How does someone justify such extreme actions against those closest to them? Martinson shot and ended the lives of her mother Jennifer Ayers and stepfather Thomas Ayers in their family home. She claimed her actions were motivated by ongoing mistreatment within the household. Martinson had an online presence as a horror blogger, writing under the name Vampchick about dark and disturbing topics. This online persona may have contributed to her desensitization to criminal themes and normalized thoughts about harming others. Her background included allegations of various forms of mistreatment by her stepfather, which she cited as justification for her actions. However, investigators and the court system found these claims insufficient to justify the extreme nature of her response. After the shootings, Martinson fled to Indiana, where she was eventually apprehended by authorities. Her attempt to flee suggested awareness that her actions were criminal, despite her claims of justification. During legal proceedings, Martinson's defense team argued that her actions were a response to household circumstances. However, prosecutors maintained that alternatives to criminal behavior had been available to her. Martinson pleaded guilty to second-degree charges and was sentenced to 23 years in prison in 2016. Her conviction and sentence were upheld on appeal in 2019. Remarkably, reports suggest that Martinson has expressed being happier in prison than she was in her family situation. This statement highlighted her continued focus on her own circumstances rather than genuine remorse for ending the lives of her family members. Martinson currently serves her sentence in a Wisconsin State Correctional Facility, where she will remain until at least 2038 when she becomes eligible for release consideration. The next case would involve coordinated criminal activity with deadly results. Robert Robinson. In March 2023, Marion County, Florida witnessed the same triple elimination that shocked the community through Taj Bruton's involvement. Robert Robinson, another teenager connected to the same criminal organization, would play his own role in what prosecutors described as coordinated executions. How does a second perpetrator in the same crime show equal callousness toward the victims? Robinson participated alongside his co-defendants in the execution-style shootings that ended the lives of Layla Silvernail, Camille Quarles, and Michael Hodo. Like Bruton, Robinson's motivation was identified as robbery, with the group specifically targeting their victims for financial gain. Robinson's background included the same gang affiliations as Bruton, suggesting a shared criminal culture that normalized extreme acts of harm. The group dynamics within their criminal organization appeared to have eliminated normal moral boundaries and empathy for potential victims. The coordinated nature of the attack demonstrated careful planning and a systematic approach to eliminating witnesses. Robinson's willing participation in such methodical harm indicated a complete disregard for human life and the suffering of others. Robinson was apprehended along with his co-defendants following the intensive manhunt by local and federal authorities. The coordinated law enforcement response reflected the serious nature of their crimes and the ongoing danger they posed to the community. During court proceedings, Robinson showed the same lack of remorse as his co-defendants. Victims' families again emphasized the brutal, execution-style nature of the attacks and the callous manner in which all perpetrators had carried out their crimes. Robinson's behavior throughout the legal proceedings suggested the same concerning lack of empathy and moral development seen in his co-defendants. His focus appeared to be on his own legal situation, rather than any recognition of the harm caused to the victims and their families. In July 2025, Robinson also entered a no-contest plea and received a life sentence. The identical sentences for all perpetrators reflected the court's determination that each played an equally significant role in the coordinated attack. Robinson currently serves his life sentence in a Florida State Correctional Facility, where he will remain alongside his co-defendants for the rest of his natural life. The next case would involve a deadly traffic incident with lasting consequences. Travion Twan D'Angelo Smith. In August 2023, Macomb County, Michigan became the scene of a traffic incident that would claim innocent lives and expose the deadly consequences of criminal decision-making. Travion Smith, a teenager attempting to evade law enforcement, would cause a crash that destroyed an entire family's future. What drives someone to prioritize their own escape over the safety of innocent people? Smith caused a fatal crash that ended the life of pregnant Faith Gumma while fleeing from police officers. His motivation was simply evading arrest, showing a willingness to endanger others rather than face the consequences of his actions. Smith had a history of evading police, suggesting a pattern of criminal behavior and disregard for authority. His previous encounters with law enforcement had apparently taught him nothing about the importance of complying with legal authority or considering public safety. The crash occurred when Smith's reckless driving during the police chase resulted in a collision that claimed not just Gumma's life, but also that of her unborn child. The double loss made the tragedy particularly devastating for the victim's family and the community. Smith was apprehended at the scene of the crash, making his responsibility for the incident undeniable. His immediate capture prevented any attempt to flee or deny his role in causing the fatal collision. During court proceedings, Smith showed little apparent remorse for the devastating impact of his actions on the victim's family. His focus appeared to be on his own legal situation, rather than any genuine understanding of the lives he had destroyed. In July 2025, Smith was convicted of second-degree charges. In August 2025, he was sentenced to 25 to 50 years in prison. The judge noted during sentencing that Smith had wiped out a family through his selfish decision to flee rather than accept responsibility. This statement emphasized the far-reaching consequences of his actions beyond just the immediate loss of life. Gumma was remembered as a young woman excited about starting her family, making her senseless death particularly tragic. The loss of both mother and unborn child highlighted how one person's criminal choices can destroy multiple lives and devastate entire families. Smith currently serves his sentence in a Michigan State Correctional Facility. The next case would involve a workplace dispute with deadly consequences. Jakari Naki-Childs. In 2023, DeKalb County, Georgia witnessed a workplace incident that would end a young life over what began as a personal dispute. Jakari Childs, a teenager dealing with relationship conflicts, would commit an act that shocked both his workplace and his community. How does a personal disagreement escalate to such a deadly conclusion in a public place? Childs shot and ended the life of his 16-year-old co-worker Jacob Miller at an IHOP restaurant where they both worked. The shooting stemmed from a dispute involving Childs' former romantic relationship. The incident occurred in a public workplace setting, making it particularly shocking to other employees and customers who witnessed the attack. The restaurant environment should have been a safe space for young workers, making Childs' decision to bring personal conflicts into the workplace especially disturbing. Childs and Miller had known each other through their work and school connections, making the attack a betrayal of both professional and personal relationships. The fact that they were schoolmates added another layer of tragedy to the incident. The shooting occurred in front of other employees and customers, traumatizing witnesses who never expected to see such an incident at their workplace. The public nature of the attack demonstrated Childs' complete disregard for the safety and well-being of innocent bystanders. Childs was apprehended immediately after the shooting, making no attempt to flee the scene. His willingness to remain at the location suggested either a complete disconnect from reality or a desire for the attention that would come from such a public act. During legal proceedings, Childs showed no apparent remorse for ending Miller's life or for traumatizing the witnesses to his crime. His focus appeared to be entirely on his own situation rather than any recognition of the harm he had caused. In June 2025, Childs was convicted of the primary charges against him. In July 2025, he was sentenced to life imprisonment with the possibility of parole. Miller was remembered by his family and co-workers as a dedicated young person who was working to support himself and build a future. His senseless death over a personal dispute highlighted how quickly workplace conflicts can escalate when individuals lack proper conflict resolution skills. Childs currently serves his sentence in a Georgia State Correctional Facility. The next case would involve multiple perpetrators in a group attack. Declan Cutler case. In March 2022, Melbourne, Australia witnessed a group attack that would claim the life of a teenager and expose the dangerous dynamics of gang-related activities. A group of young people, ranging in various ages, would participate in an attack on Declan Cutler that shocked the entire nation. How does a group of young people collectively decide to participate in such a brutal act? 4 teenagers participated in the group stabbing of 16-year-old Declan Cutler in what authorities described as a gang-related or random attack. The motivation appeared to stem from gang rivalry or simply random targeting of an innocent victim. The perpetrators came from backgrounds involving gang affiliation, exposure to significant household instability, and regular substance use. These environmental factors appeared to have normalized criminal behavior and eliminated normal moral boundaries about harming others. The attack was captured on CCTV footage, which became crucial evidence in identifying and prosecuting the perpetrators. The video evidence showed the coordinated nature of the assault and the deliberate targeting of their victim. The group dynamics appeared to have encouraged increasingly aggressive behavior, with each participant feeling emboldened by the presence of others. This collective responsibility diffusion likely made each individual feel less accountable for the final outcome. All participants were apprehended following investigation by Australian authorities using the CCTV evidence and witness testimony. The clear video evidence made denial impossible and ensured swift prosecution. In February 2024, 4 of the perpetrators were found guilty of various charges related to Cutler's death. In July 2024, they were sentenced to terms ranging from 17 to 19.5 years imprisonment. Cutler's father delivered powerful impact statements during sentencing, pleading for an end to knife-related criminal activity and expressing how the loss had ended part of him. His testimony highlighted the devastating impact of gang-related harming on innocent families. Remarkably, one perpetrator who was initially cleared due to their young age was rearrested in August 2025 for involvement in a violent home invasion that resulted in another death. This development suggested that early intervention had failed to redirect their criminal trajectory. The convicted perpetrators currently serve their sentences in Australian correctional facilities. The next case would involve a notorious family legacy of criminal behavior, Natasha Wallen Cornett. In April 1997, Tennessee became the scene of one of the most shocking family eliminations in the state's history. Natasha Cornett, barely an adult at the time, would lead a group in an attack that claimed multiple innocent lives and exposed the dangerous influence of extremist ideologies. How does someone become convinced that ideology justifies ending the lives of innocent families? Cornett led a group in shooting the Lillelid family at a rest stop in what prosecutors described as a carjacking that escalated into something far worse. The motivation appeared to combine practical criminal goals with what Cornett described as satanic influences. Cornett had described herself as Satan's daughter and had developed an extremist worldview that devalued human life. Her leadership role in the group demonstrated how charismatic individuals can influence others to participate in increasingly serious criminal activities. The attack targeted the Lillelid family, Vidar, Delphina, and their young daughter Tabitha, who were simply traveling through the area. The random nature of the victim selection made the crime particularly frightening to the general public and highlighted the unpredictable danger posed by the group. After the shootings, Cornett and her accomplices fled, but were apprehended following a police chase. The pursuit and capture prevented them from potentially harming additional innocent people during their escape. Throughout her legal proceedings, Cornett showed no genuine remorse for the destruction of an entire family. Her continued adherence to extremist beliefs and lack of empathy for the victims concerned authorities and court observers. Cornett pleaded guilty to avoid potential capital punishment and was sentenced to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. The life sentence ensured she would never again be in a position to harm innocent people or influence others toward criminal behavior. The Lillelid family was remembered as innocent travelers who had the misfortune of encountering Cornett's group at the wrong place and time. Their senseless deaths highlighted the random nature of some criminal acts and the devastating impact on surviving family members. As of 2025, Cornett remains incarcerated in Tennessee Prison for Women, where she has spent nearly 3 decades. Her case became a landmark example of how extremist ideologies can motivate seemingly random acts of harm against innocent people. The next case would involve substance-fueled criminal behavior with deadly results. Jordan Jobson. In August 2007, the UK witnessed a crime that would highlight the dangerous combination of substance misuse and criminal tendencies. Jordan Jobson, a teenager with a history of problematic behavior, would commit an act so severe it would result in multiple sentences and ongoing concerns about public safety. What drives someone to commit such extreme acts and then continue to pose a threat even after serving time? Jobson stabbed 18-year-old new mother Samantha Magin 43 times in what prosecutors described as a substance-fueled attack. The motivation appeared to stem from impaired judgment due to substance use rather than any personal animosity toward the victim. Jobson's background included regular binge drinking and substance use from a young age. These behavioral patterns had apparently eliminated normal inhibitions and moral boundaries about harming others, creating a dangerous individual prone to extreme actions. The attack occurred when Jobson encountered Magin, who had recently become a mother and was trying to build a life for herself and her child. The random nature of the targeting made the crime particularly frightening to the community and highlighted the unpredictable danger posed by individuals with substance problems. Jobson was apprehended at the scene of the attack, making denial of his involvement impossible. The immediate capture prevented any attempt to flee or cover up his actions, ensuring swift prosecution. During court proceedings, Jobson showed little clear remorse for ending Magin's life or for destroying the future of her young child. His apparent inability to grasp the full impact of his actions concerned authorities and suggested ongoing dangerousness. Jobson was initially sentenced to 15 years, but this was reduced to 11 years on appeal. He was released in 2018 after serving his sentence. However, in 2021, Jobson was re-imprisoned for breach of his release conditions. Magin's mother described Jobson as a ticking time bomb, whose quiet release had put the community at risk. Magin was remembered as a young mother who was working to create a stable life for her child when her life was cut short. Her senseless death highlighted the devastating impact of substance-fueled criminal behavior on innocent families. Jobson currently serves her sentence in a UK correctional facility. The next case would involve claims of justification that the court ultimately rejected. Coalton Glen Orr. In August 2016, Oklahoma became the scene of a family tragedy that would raise complex questions about claimed justification and personal responsibility. Coalton Orr, a young teenager at the time, would commit an act against his stepmother that he claimed was necessary to end ongoing household problems. How does someone justify taking such extreme action against a family member? Orr shot and ended the life of his stepmother, Laura Hendricks, in their family home. He claimed his actions were motivated by ongoing mistreatment within the household. Orr's background included allegations of inappropriate conduct by his stepmother, which he cited as justification for his extreme response. However, investigators and the court system found that legal alternatives to criminal action had been available to him. Rather than seeking help from authorities, school officials, or other family members, Orr chose to resolve his perceived problems through criminal means. This decision demonstrated poor judgment and an inability to recognize appropriate ways to handle difficult family situations. After the shooting, Orr walked into a police station and confessed to what he had done. His confession included statements that he was tired of the alleged mistreatment. Despite his young age at the time of the crime, Orr was tried as an adult due to the serious nature of his actions. The decision to try him in adult court reflected the court's determination that the severity of his crime outweighed age considerations. Orr's legal team appealed the decision to try him as an adult, but this appeal was unsuccessful. The courts determined that the nature of his crime and his apparent understanding of his actions warranted adult prosecution. In 2018, Orr pleaded guilty and was sentenced to life imprisonment. The life sentence reflected both the severity of his crime and the court's concern about his potential future dangerousness. Throughout the legal proceedings, Orr's focus appeared to be primarily on justifying his actions, rather than expressing genuine remorse for ending his stepmother's life. His continued emphasis on his own perceived grievances rather than the harm he had caused concerned authorities monitoring his case. Orr currently serves his life sentence in an Oklahoma State correctional facility. The next case would involve a disturbing fascination with experiencing harm to others Dakota White. In October 2016, Georgia became the scene of a crime that would expose the dangerous combination of thrill-seeking behavior and complete disregard for human life. Dakota White, a teenager at the time, would commit an act against a friend that he claimed was motivated by curiosity about the experience of ending someone's life. What drives someone to harm another person simply to satisfy their own twisted curiosity? White stabbed and strangled 18-year-old Sam Poss in what prosecutors described as a thrill-seeking attack, motivated by White's desire to experience what it felt like to end someone's life. White had reportedly expressed wanting to see how it feels to end someone's life. White's background included exposure to domestic instability and substance use issues within his household. These environmental factors may have contributed to his desensitization to harmful behavior and his development of concerning fantasies about harming others. The attack was described as part of what White characterized as a planned experience, suggesting premeditation rather than impulsive behavior. This level of planning demonstrated a concerning level of detachment from normal moral and emotional responses. White led authorities to Poss's body after confessing to the crime. His willingness to provide this information suggested either a desire for attention or a complete lack of understanding about the appropriate way to handle his actions. During his confession and throughout legal proceedings, White showed little genuine remorse for ending Poss's life. His focus appeared to be primarily on his own experience rather than any recognition of the harm he had caused to the victim and their family. White was convicted and sentenced to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole in 2018. In 2020, the Georgia Supreme Court upheld his conviction and sentence. Poss was remembered as a young person with potential who had the misfortune of being selected by White as the subject of his deadly curiosity. The senseless nature of his death highlighted the danger posed by individuals who view others as objects for their own experimentation. White currently serves his life sentence in a Georgia State Correctional Facility, where he will remain for the rest of his natural life. The next case would involve a carefully planned attack with a disturbing target list: Aiden von Grabo. In 2019, Colorado became the scene of a planned attack that would expose the dangerous potential of organized, harmful fantasies. Aiden von Grabo, a teenager at the time, would commit an act that demonstrated careful planning and a concerning focus on ending the lives of specific individuals. How does someone develop and act upon such detailed plans to harm others? Von Grabo stabbed 20-year-old Michaela Grote, though she was reportedly not his intended target according to a list he had created. He had compiled what investigators described as a list of individuals he planned to harm. Von Grabo's background included experiencing mistreatment from his father and taking Accutane medication, which his defense team cited as contributing factors. However, the systematic nature of his planning suggested deliberate criminal intent rather than impulsive behavior due to external factors. The existence of his target list demonstrated a level of premeditation and organization that concerned investigators and mental health professionals. The systematic approach to planning harm against multiple individuals suggested a dangerous mindset that went far beyond typical teenage problems or impulsive behavior. Von Grabo's attack on Grote occurred when he apparently targeted the wrong person, indicating either poor execution of his plan or a willingness to harm anyone when his primary targets were unavailable. This flexibility in victim selection made him particularly dangerous to the general public. Von Grabo was apprehended and charged with serious criminal offenses related to both the attack on Grote and his documented plans to harm others. The discovery of his list provided authorities with crucial evidence about his intentions and mental state. In 2019, von Grabo pleaded guilty to avoid trial and was sentenced to life imprisonment. The life sentence reflected both the severity of his actions and the ongoing danger he posed to any individuals who might have been on his target list. Throughout his legal proceedings, von Grabo showed little genuine remorse for his actions or understanding of how his plans had terrorized potential victims and their families. His focus appeared to be primarily on his own circumstances, rather than the harm he had caused or planned to cause. Grota survived the attack, but suffered significant physical and emotional trauma as a result of being randomly targeted by von Grabo. Her experience highlighted the unpredictable danger posed by individuals who develop systematic plans to harm others. Von Grabo currently serves his life sentence in a Colorado State correctional facility. The final case would involve a family tragedy with multiple victims. Joseph B. Spencer. In September 2012, West Virginia became the scene of a family tragedy that would devastate an entire household in a single incident. Joseph Spencer, a teenager at the time, would commit acts against his own family members that would shock his rural community and highlight the deadly potential of unresolved family conflicts. What drives someone to turn against their entire family in such a systematic way? Spencer shot and ended the lives of his parents, Frederick and Dixie Spencer, as well as his sister, Patience, in their family home. The motivation appeared to stem from ongoing family disputes, though the specific triggers for such extreme action remained unclear. Spencer's background included typical rural family life in West Virginia, making the sudden escalation to such extreme behavior particularly shocking to those who knew the family. The lack of obvious warning signs made the crime especially disturbing to the community. The systematic nature of the attack, targeting multiple family members, suggested either careful planning or a complete psychological break from normal family relationships. The comprehensive elimination of his immediate family indicated a level of detachment that concerned investigators. Spencer was arrested at the scene of the shootings, making denial of his involvement impossible. His presence at the location and the physical evidence clearly established his responsibility for all three deaths. During court proceedings, Spencer showed no apparent remorse for destroying his entire family. His emotional detachment throughout the legal process suggested either severe psychological problems or a complete absence of normal family bonds. Spencer pleaded guilty to all charges to avoid potential capital punishment. In 2014, he was sentenced to 3 life terms, ensuring he would never be released from prison. Despite his guilty plea, court officials noted that Spencer showed no mercy toward his family members and deserved none in return. The complete destruction of his family left no survivors to advocate for leniency or provide insight into potential triggers. The Spencer family was remembered by their community as ordinary people who had the misfortune of living with someone capable of such extreme actions. Their deaths highlighted how family conflicts can escalate beyond imagination when combined with serious psychological problems. Spencer currently serves his 3 life sentences in a West Virginia state correctional facility, where he will remain for the rest of his natural life. His case became a tragic reminder that the people closest to us can sometimes pose the greatest danger, and that warning signs of potential family harm should never be ignored. Gavin Ramsey. On April 6, 2018, Wadsworth, Ohio, witnessed one of the most depraved crimes imaginable. The perpetrator was 17-year-old Gavin Ramsey, who broke into his 98-year-old neighbor's home and committed acts so horrific that seasoned detectives struggled to describe them. But what kind of teenager could do such unspeakable things to an elderly woman who trusted him? At 2 a.m., Ramsey snuck into Margaret Douglas's house, strangled her, and then sexually abused her corpse. He recorded the entire crime on his phone, taking pictures and videos of her body before stuffing it in her closet. Then he calmly went home and acted like nothing happened. 3 days later, Margaret's nephew called 911 when she didn't answer her phone. Police found her body in the closet with a plastic glove left behind, the key evidence that would destroy Ramsey's life. Ramsey had been fascinated with death and serial killers, particularly Jeffrey Dahmer. His parents blamed his prescription medication, Zoloft, for changing his behavior and making him violent. But when DNA from the glove matched Ramsey, he confessed everything. "I don't know if I was going into the house. It's like the biggest rush I could get," he told detectives, describing how he watched Margaret sleep before killing her. Ramsey pleaded no contest to aggravated murder. Margaret's family spoke about their devastation, calling him a coward who preyed on the most vulnerable person he could find. His own mother blamed herself, saying her decision to medicate him caused the tragedy. Judge Christopher Collier sentenced Ramsey to life without parole in January 2019. His appeals were rejected in 2021, ensuring he would die in prison. The next case takes us from sexual violence to something even more twisted: a teenager who killed just to satisfy his curiosity about death. Brian Cohey. On February 27, 2021, Grand Junction, Colorado, became the scene of a murder so grotesque it defied belief. The killer was 19-year-old Brian Cohey, who hunted down a homeless man and committed acts that shocked even experienced homicide detectives. But what drives someone to not just kill, but to take pieces of their victim home as trophies? At 11 p.m., Cohey tracked down 69-year-old Warren Barnes and stabbed him repeatedly in the neck. But the murder was just the beginning. Cohey then dismembered Barnes's body, taking the head and hands home as grotesque souvenirs. Cohey had been fascinated with serial killer Jeffrey Dahmer since childhood, earning the nickname Dahmer in high school. He had autism and a history of violent behavior, including killing a cat as a child. On March 1st, Cohey's horrified mother discovered the body parts wrapped in plastic bags in her son's room. Her 911 call captured her shock. "I think it's a human head, because it looks like it. I saw an ear." When police arrived, Cohey calmly confessed, "I've been wanting to do this for a long fucking time," he told detectives, describing how he wore 3 layers of gloves and targeted a homeless person because, "This guy, no one's going to miss him." Cohey pleaded not guilty by reason of insanity, but was convicted after a 12-day trial in February 2023. His mother sobbed in court, devastated that her son had become a monster. Judge Richard Gurley called it one of the most horrific cases in his career and sentenced Cohey to life without parole. The wannabe cannibal would never taste freedom again. Our next case proves that evil knows no age limits, not even when the killer is barely a teenager. Christian Fernandez. On March 14, 2011, Jacksonville, Florida, witnessed something unthinkable: a murder committed by a child who was barely old enough for middle school. Christian Fernandez, just 12 years old, killed his 2-year-old half-brother David Galarraga in an act of violence that shocked the nation. But how does a 12-year-old develop the capacity for such brutal violence against a helpless toddler? At 6 p.m., Christian was alone with David when his rage exploded. Angry about abuse from his stepfather, Christian grabbed the toddler and slammed him headfirst into a bookshelf, not once, but twice. David collapsed, bleeding from his head and mouth, unconscious and dying. For 8 horrific hours, Christian's mother, Susanna, failed to take David to the hospital, watching as the toddler remained unconscious. By the time they finally sought help, it was too late. Christian had suffered years of abuse himself, including sexual molestation by a cousin at age 8. His mother had a history of drug abuse, and his grandmother was also a drug user. Violence was the only language he knew. During police interrogation, Christian initially lied, claiming David was hurt when books fell on him. But when confronted with evidence, the 12-year-old confessed, "I pushed him against a bookshelf. I felt bad because then I realized what I actually done because I wasn't really thinking about what I was doing when I pushed him." Christian became the youngest person ever tried as an adult in Florida. His case sparked national debates about juvenile justice and whether children so young could truly understand the consequences of their actions. He eventually